With an estimated 30 to 37 trillion human cells in our bodies, we can't simply rely on diffusion from the environment alone, as an amoeba does, to supply all of those cells with their needs, particularly those cells deep within us. We need an internal transportation network to deliver oxygen and glucose and to rid the cells of carbon dioxide. Don't get me wrong, we're still reliant on diffusion, but only over short distances at the interface between the capillaries and the cells in the capillary beds, or between the capillaries and the alveoli. All animal circulatory systems consist of some circulatory fluid, like blood or hemolymph in the arthropods, a set of interconnecting vessels, and a muscular pump, like you see on the right. Sometimes it can be multiple pumps, like the aortic arches, the 5 aortic arches that we find in an earthworm. Circulatory systems can either be open or they can be closed, and here's a diagram of that. On the left-hand side, insects like this grasshopper have an open circulatory system where the hemolymph, the blood and the lymph fluids are mixed together, forming that green hemolymph, directly bathes the organs. The hemolymph is driven by the contraction of a series of tubular hearts, which you can see here, these swellings. The annelids, like you see on the right, the earthworms, as well as the echinoderms and the vertebrates like us, have a closed circulatory system where the blood is completely contained within vessels in closed loops. So vertebrates have 3 types of vessels in their closed loops. Arteries. Arteries starts with A. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Arteries, like you see here on the left, have thick muscular walls because they're immediately downstream from the heart pump, so they're under much greater pressure. Veins. Veins start with V. Veins have valves. So veins have much thinner walls. They're under lower pressure, and veins are going to return blood to the heart. There are valves in your veins that prevent the blood from flowing in the wrong direction. The blood is moved throughout the veins by the contraction of the skeletal muscles. And then finally, on the far right, we have the tiny capillaries. These are very, very small vessels, and the walls of the capillaries are only 1 cell thick. So the capillaries are going to exchange oxygen and glucose, as well as take in carbon dioxide from the cells. So again, arteries carry oxygenated or red blood away from the heart. The capillaries donate that oxygen to the cells. The blood now becomes blue or deoxygenated and is returned to the heart via veins. So different lineages have different metabolic needs, so they have different pumps. Fish who do not maintain a constant body temperature, although there are a few exceptions, so sharks, as well as pelagic fish like tuna, they're going to keep a few skeletal muscles warm so that they're ready to go. But fish are generally ectothermic. Thus, fish can get away with a 2-chambered heart, consisting of 1 atrium and 1 ventricle. The atrium, or atria when it's plural, are always on the top of the heart. These are the chambers that receive blood, and the ventricles are on the bottom. These are the large muscular chambers that contract and pump blood. So the ventricle, the single ventricle in fish, is going to pump that deoxygenated blood up to the gills, and then through the process of countercurrent exchange, the gills are going to pick up oxygen in the blood. Amphibians and most reptiles have a three-chambered heart. So now we have this double circuit with two atria, a right atria and a left atria. So deoxygenated or blue blood is received by the right atrium. It moves down into this single ventricle, which contracts and pumps it up to the lungs or the skin in amphibians. Here it picks up oxygen, it becomes oxygenated or red blood, and then it's received by the left atrium back to that single ventricle and then pumped out the second circuit to provide the cells of the body with oxygen. So I want you to note the purple blood here. So that signifies the mixing of blue deoxygenated blood with red oxygenated blood. So this is not a very efficient setup because you've got blue and red blood mixing, at least relative to our hearts. But it suits amphibians and most reptiles just fine because they're ectothermic. They don't maintain a constant body temperature, so they have much lower metabolic rates. They need less calories, therefore they eat less, and their cells respire less. They're doing less cellular respiration. Mammals, birds, and the crocodilians have evolved a four-chambered heart. So now we see this septum, this wall that's going to separate the right from the left ventricle. So mammals and birds are endothermic, meaning they maintain a constant body temperature. Thus, they have higher metabolic rates. They consume more calories. They need more food. They need more oxygen because they're doing more cellular respiration. Hell, I like to eat 3, sometimes 5 meals a day, but the snakes in our lab, we feed them every 2 weeks. Okay, so you're going to see this diagram on this week's assessment. Let's take a closer look at the mammalian four-chambered heart, like humans have. So we're going to start down here at number 9. This is a large vein called the vena cava. The veins, of course, bring deoxygenated or blue blood back to the heart. The vena cava on the lower part of the heart is called the inferior vena cava. It's returning deoxygenated blood from the legs and the torso up to the heart. Number 9 up here, this is the superior vena cava, which is bringing deoxygenated blood from the head and the arms. So both of the vena cava empty into the first chamber of the heart, number 10 here, the right atrium. Remember, the atria receive blood and the ventricles pump the blood. So don't get confused on your assessment. The right atria is on the left side of the diagram, and that's because of the person in the diagram, the heart in the diagram is facing you like this, right? And so, for example, I'm holding up my right hand right now from my perspective, but from your perspective, it appears on the left side of your screen. So don't let that confuse you. Okay, blood is going to travel from the right atrium through this valve. This is a valve that prevents backflow. It's a one-way valve down into the muscular right ventricle. The right ventricle contracts, sending deoxygenated blood to the pulmonary arteries. Number 2. Pulmonary means lungs. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. So this is the one set of arteries that are carrying deoxygenated blood. Most arteries carry oxygenated blood, but the pulmonary arteries carry the deoxygenated blood to number 3, the lungs. Here, that blood picks up oxygen in the interface with the lungs. It's now oxygenated and it returns to the heart via the pulmonary veins, number 4 on your diagram. So the one group of veins that are carrying oxygenated blood. Most veins are carrying deoxygenated blood. The pulmonary veins dump that oxygenated blood into the left atrium, the receiving chamber. It's going to pass through a one-way valve into the left ventricle, number 6. The left ventricle is the largest, most muscular chamber in the four-chambered mammalian heart. So we've got really thick musculature here. And when that left ventricle contracts, it sends that oxygenated blood out this superhighway, this massive artery called the aorta. So when the heart contracts, it's actually lub lub, lub lub, right? As these two ventricles contract and send blood on each of these individual circuits. The circulatory system has a second circulatory fluid beyond blood that's called lymph. Lymph is going to play an important role in immune response. It's driven around the body not by a muscular pump like the heart, but by the contraction and relaxation of skeletal muscles. So lymph collects in a series of lymph nodes throughout the body. So a telltale sign of an infection, if you go to the doctor, are swollen lymph nodes in your neck, in your armpits, or in your groin.